What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And as the host of Locked On Rockets, I'll be discussing how Houston Rockets veteran guard Eric Gordon had his post-game comments after the Rockets' ugly loss against the New York Knicks on New Year's Eve, saying that there has been no improvement since the beginning of the season. What was the catalyst for this comment? Was this his mic drop, trade me moment, or was it just some type of encouragement for the young guys? But first, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Next game, how about taking Luka Doncic to score more than 26.5 points? Or I guess at this point, you could take him to score more than 36.5 points or maybe even 46.5 points and feel pretty good about it. What about LeBron James to have more than 7.5 rebounds? How about Kevin Durant to have less than 6.5 assists and maybe Steph Curry to have more than 3.5 three-pointers made? So what is PrizePicks, right? What is this daily fantasy sports option? Basically, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times back on your money on any entry that you submit. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the PrizePicks projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That's NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, you name it, they've got you covered over at PrizePicks. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that simple. They offer safe and incredibly fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And now, as the host of Locked On Rockets, it's me, Jackson Gatlin, who you can find wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search Locked On Rockets, wherever you get your pods, including YouTube, to discuss Eric Gordon basically kicking off 2023 in a big way with a little forward quote to close out the new year here in Houston after a very, very disappointing loss against an undermanned New York Knicks team here in Houston for the Houston Rockets, 108-88. Speaking after the game where the Rockets had 24 turnovers, just gift wrapping the New York Knicks points on a silver platter in this game, Eric Gordon was visibly frustrated, was upset, and delivered what I believe to be his mic drop moment as a Houston Rocket when asked about the improvement that he's seen out of this team from the beginning of the season. He had 4 little words that he decided to share with us, saying, "There is no improvement." And man, what a way to end the year of 2022, and what a way to walk into this new year. Now look, first, is Eric Gordon right? Unfortunately, he is, and I respect the hell out of him for voicing that frustration as one of the only 2 veterans on this Houston Rockets roster. It's got to be maddening for him to see the same thing happening again and again, the same mistakes being made, the same issues over the course of a season, and not seeing the team grow as a team. There has been individual improvement with some of the guys on this Houston Rockets roster, but the collective has not improved nearly as much as one would think that they should have at this point for some of these players, like just kind of as a team, as a cohesive unit. So Eric Gordon just calling it as he sees it, which, what does that mean? Like, why did he say that, right? At this point, Eric Gordon has been a good soldier for the Houston Rockets. He's basically done everything the organization has asked him to do. He's been that kind of stabilizing presence for this team throughout his tenure, throughout this Rockets rebuild. So why did he finally say it? Why did he finally decide to call out the organization, a direct indictment of the coaching staff, the organization, the development so far this season, all of that? It could just be as simple as he might see the writing on the wall, and maybe there's already a trade teed up behind the scenes to get him out of Houston, and he's just fed up and ready to be gone, because that's very much where the body language is at. That's where he's at when you watch him play. This is a guy who is, when he is engaged and playing his best basketball, is a borderline all-star talent, right? He is a former Sixth Man of the Year award winner. He has helped the Rockets in the past during the James Harden, Chris Paul era. against the loaded Golden State Warriors, and he is still a very, very good basketball player when he is locked in and engaged. But unfortunately, for a majority of this season, he's basically been mentally checked out, going through the motions, and it's finally hit a point where it's at its boiling point for Eric Gordon, where he deserves to be playing for a contender. He deserves to be playing meaningful basketball. He is one of the most impactful role players in Houston Rockets history, seeing as how he was a part of the franchise best 65-win Houston Rockets just a few years ago before the end of the James Harden era. And for him to kind of be living through and seeing this next stage of Houston Rockets basketball, but not being happy about it and being frustrated with the performance of the team and all of this, it just says that this Rockets organization and their front office have kind of fumbled handling the situation up to this point. Because why are you holding on to him, right? You took care of all the other veterans on the roster. You sent James Harden where he wanted to go at the beginning of at the beginning of the end, if you will. Got James Harden to Brooklyn. You sent PJ Tucker to Milwaukee. You waived Boogie Cousins and Ben McLemore to get them to where they wanted to go. You even sent Victor Oladipo to Miami Heat, a couple seasons ago. But for some reason, Eric Gordon, maybe because he never spoke up, maybe he didn't want out previously and was content with the situation up until more recently, all of that. But he's finally at a point where he is willing to speak up and speak out to the media, which is kind of refreshing, honestly, to hear him say that. And is this Eric Gordon's mic drop moment? I believe it is. I would be really shocked and confused if we see Eric Gordon take up the court again as a Houston Rocket. I'm expecting a trade on the horizon very, very shortly. But at the same time, maybe it's also just his way of, encouraging the young guys by calling out their lack of, the lack of accountability, the frustrating turnovers, the issues that have been, rearing their ugly heads repeatedly this season. Maybe that's just his way of kind of lighting a fire under this team to try and get them to play a little bit better. And it wasn't necessarily a mic drop, get me out of here moment, but I'm more inclined to believe it's more the former than the latter. And so what happens next if you're the Rockets and Eric Gordon, right? Where do you even go from here after a quote like that? How do you walk back into that locker room and look at your teammates and be like, yep, no improvement here. Don't see any of you guys getting better. The most likely ending for Eric Gordon has been and should have been a trade a long time ago to a team where he can play meaningful basketball again, and for the Rockets to try and pick up and accrue, an additional asset, possibly a first-round draft pick or a young player who doesn't necessarily have the room to grow or develop on a contending team. And that, to me, is still the most likely outcome of this entire situation. There are no shortage of suitable trade partners out there for Eric Gordon. My understanding of the situation is the Rockets have had numerous offers of teams knocking with first-round draft picks for Eric Gordon, but they haven't caved on any of them quite just yet because they haven't been the type of first-round draft picks that the organization has wanted to this point. But if you're the Rockets right now, especially with how things have soured with this relationship, you basically need to just take the next first-round draft pick offer that comes your way and wash your hands of the situation, send Eric Gordon on his way, thank him for his services to the organization, all of that. But it's time to move on. He is frustrated. And if he steps back on the court as a member of this team, then not only is he going to drive his trade value further down, but you're going to have a player who is actively, visibly frustrated and upset out there playing with guys, not giving his best, not playing his hardest. And it's only going to reduce your leverage even further in future trade discussions. So you look at the teams that make the most sense for an Eric Gordon deal. The Lakers desperately need help, but that's, who knows if they're actually going to be willing to try and get LeBron James help at this point in the season. All the ties come back to two teams at the very top of the list, the Phoenix Suns and the Philadelphia 76ers, because Eric Gordon has ties to both of those organizations. He's still close with Chris Paul, played some of the best basketball of his career playing alongside Chris Paul, and the Suns are without Devin Booker for an extended period of time. So they could desperately use the help of a veteran stabilizing force like Eric Gordon. And then you also look at the 76ers, all the ties there. James Harden currently playing in Philly, PJ Tucker currently playing in Philly, Daryl Morey in Philly. Basically, the Philadelphia 76ers are like Rockets Northeast at this point. And so why not finish, getting the band back together and adding Eric Gordon to that mix so that he can compete for a title with his former teammates up in Philadelphia. Those are the two teams that make the most sense in my mind as for a potential Eric Gordon trade. And at this point, it's not a matter of if a trade happens, it's more a matter of when a trade happens and how much damage the Rockets can mitigate in the meantime by either just sitting out Eric Gordon and icing him completely while they work on finding a trade partner, or are they willing to let him go back on the floor and potentially drive his trade value even further down? What's going to ultimately happen with Eric Gordon? Will he be traded? Was this his mic drop moment? Has he played his last game for the Houston Rockets? I'll have you covered for all of that and more, of course, right over at Locked On Rockets.